Designed in the 1960s, first flown in 1974 and conceived as a high-altitude supersonic bomber, the B-1 was to replace the B-52 Stratofortress and the B-58 Hustler. The B-1, or Bone, as it's affectionately called, is still in use today and is an important member of the USA's bomber fleet. But the bomber we see today isn't the one originally designed. The B-1 project was cancelled and brought back to life numerous times. Step back to the 1950s. The Cold War is in full swing, and the arms race was on. The Soviet Union and United States are vying for supremacy as the world's superpowers. New weapons platforms are being rapidly developed, with each side trying to gain the advantage in offensive and defensive capabilities. To that end, the United States Air Force issued requirements for a new bomber. They wanted a bomber that had the speed of the B-58, the first operational bomber that was capable of flying at over Mach 2, combined with the 70,000 pounds or 32,000 kilograms of weapons payload capacity of the B-52 Stratofortress. In 1957, the United States Air Force selected the B-70 Valkyrie, a bomber that could cruise at Mach 3 at 70,000 feet or 21,000 meters. The Valkyrie would fly at similar altitudes to the U-2 spy plane but at much higher speeds. This would have taken it beyond the flight envelope of most Soviet fighters. However, there was already a problem with the selection. Rapid technological improvements meant that even though the Valkyrie could fly higher and faster than Soviet warplanes, they were matched by new surface-to-air missiles. Development of intercontinental ballistic missiles or ICBMs, and submarine-launched ballistic missiles, or SLBMs also had an impact on the B-70 program, with some in the U.S. government high command questioning the need for the expensive aircraft. The mood was shifting towards the use of ICBMs as the preferred method to deliver nuclear strikes. President John F. Kennedy eventually canceled the B-70 program in 1961. A new strategic approach was needed if bombers were still to be a part of the USA's nuclear deterrent and strike capabilities. The United States Air Force Strategic Air Command recognized that there needed to be a shift from high-altitude to low-level bombers. Aircraft platforms could penetrate into enemy territory using terrain masking, a method where flying low over hills and valleys could confuse and break line-of-sight tracking and radar, thus making them harder to spot and attack. President Richard Nixon revived a previously canceled project under a new designation as the Advanced Manned Strategic Aircraft Project or AMSA to accelerate new study designs. In April 1969, the project officially became the B-1A. Proposals were received from General Dynamic, Boeing and North American Rockwell. In June 1970, Rockwell was awarded the contract. Initially, the project called for the production of 40 engines, 2 test airframes and 5 aircraft. However, in 1971 this was cut down to 3 test flight aircraft. The plans were for 240 B-1s to be built, being in full operation by 1979. The B-1 was designed as a swept-wing platform and took features similar to that of the F-111. The variable wing configuration helped to provide more lift during landing and takeoff, and lower drag during its high-speed phase of flight. Other design features allowed the aircraft to fly at around Mach 2. The large-size fuel capacity would enable a dash phase of flight to be sustained for longer than other bombers. It was envisioned that low-level altitude flight would be over Mach 1.2, but this was lowered to around 0.85. This reduced the cost of the system as there was a lesser amount of titanium needed at critical parts of the fuselage to achieve higher speeds. The first B-1A prototype flew in December 23, 1974. In 1976, a Soviet pilot named Viktor Blenko defected to Japan in his MiG-25 Foxbat. While being interviewed by U.S. officials, he revealed details about a new MiG-31 aircraft. This new MiG had look-down and shoot-down capable radar systems, which meant that the B-1 would be easier to attack even if it was under radar detection. This threatened the B-1 project and led to some senators deriding the B-1 project. Jimmy Carter said during his presidential campaign, The B-1 bomber is an example of a proposed system which should not be funded. In 1977, as he took office, Carter ordered a review of the B-1 program. On the 30th of June of that year, Carter canceled the project. Analysts were moving towards a strategic bomber philosophy once again. As the late 70s continued, there was a shift in the Soviets. They were extending their sphere of influence around the world, such as supporting proxy Cuban operations in the Angolan Civil War, and then the invasion of Afghanistan in 1979. Concerns were raised within the American U.S. Department of Defense. The Iraq-Afghanistan border was out of range for the U.S. carrier-based aircraft. Ronald Reagan became president in 1981, and during his campaign, he claimed Jimmy Carter was weak on defense and used the cancellation of the B-1 as an example. Still, technology improved and the aging B-52 fleet became theoretically more vulnerable to the Soviet MiG-31, new SA-10 missiles and early warning systems. This prompted analysts to move away from strategic bomber operations to favor multi-operational capabilities. The B-1, F-111 and ATB were possible solutions. Eventually, in 1981, Reagan ordered 100 B-1s for the production of the new B-1 bombers at a cost of $2.2 billion. However, design changes were made to ensure it would still be suited to the various mission types it could take. Thus the B1-B was born. The B's maximum takeoff weight was increased to 477,000 pounds or 216,000 kilograms from the B1A's 395,000 pounds or 179,000 kilograms. The electronics and avionics were upgraded to counteract the MiG-31 radar system. There was widespread criticism of the B1-B project in Congress, arguing that the airframe would be obsolete within a decade. However, the main argument for the project was the large conventional weapons payload the B1-B had. The first B1-B began flight testing in 1983, and on the 2nd of May 1988, the 100th B1-B bomber was delivered. The B-1 was first used in a support role during Operation Desert Fox in Iraq. In 1998 it also operated in Kosovo and Afghanistan. More recently the bomber has been used against the so-called Islamic State during the Syrian civil war. With its capability to carry a vast array of bombs, anti-ship missiles and multiple hard points, including 3 internal bomb bays, the B-1 has proven itself to be a lethal and important part of the USA's air combat capabilities.